12:47 a.m. The night shift is always the longest stretch in a 911 dispatcher's life, not because of the number of calls, but because of the silence between them. A silence so thick you can hear your own heartbeat pounding through the headset. The phone rang. I answered on instinct, reflexes honed over years. 911? How can I help you? There was no adult voice, no familiar panic, just crying. Very soft, very close, as if the child were pressing their face into the phone so no one else could hear. Then a whisper, shaking, but so clear it sent a chill down my spine. Don't let them see me. I sat up straighter. My hand froze over the keyboard for a beat. Where are you? I asked, keeping my voice calm, exactly as procedure required. The screen in front of me showed no caller ID, no map, no coordinates. Just a line of bright red text I had never seen in my entire career. Location data unavailable. My heart started beating faster. Are you in danger right now? I continued, my hand already poised to initiate a manual trace. The child answered immediately. It's very dark in here. I don't see any windows. I stopped. I hadn't asked about the room. Is there anyone there with you? I asked, faster now. It smells like metal. I don't like it. The skin at the back of my neck went cold. That wasn't how children usually describe things. It wasn't the language of ordinary panic. Listen to me, I said. I need you to stay calm. I'm going to send people to help you. No, the child whispered urgently. Please don't. I frowned. Why not? Because if you send them, they'll die. I'd heard plenty of irrational things on emergency calls, panic, hallucinations, threats. But this voice wasn't out of control. It was steady, certain, as if the child were stating something they already knew the outcome of. I pressed the key for an emergency trace request. The system froze. Not slow, not lagging, completely still. 6 seconds. The longest 6 seconds I had ever experienced in the dispatch room. Everything else around me kept working. Other calls kept coming in. Only this one seemed cut off from the system. Ma'am, the child spoke again. Your name is Sarah, right? I went cold. I hadn't introduced myself. By policy, I wasn't allowed to. How do you know my name? I asked, my voice beginning to lose its professional steadiness. The child didn't answer right away. I heard quick breathing. Then another sound slipped into the headset. Footsteps, slow, heavy, very close, each step deliberate, like someone walking across an empty concrete floor. Is someone coming towards you? I asked quickly. The child whispered, almost without crying now. I have to be quiet. Listen to me, I said, almost pleading. I need you to talk. I need you to stay on the line. The footsteps stopped. The space on the other end of the call went dead silent. Then the child spoke, very softly. They're standing right behind me. My heart dropped. By every rule, I was supposed to keep the caller talking, to reassure them, to buy time until help arrived. But there was nowhere to send help. No coordinates, no signal, no indication that this call even existed in the real world. A warning flashed on my screen, covering the entire call interface. Call classified. Do not escalate. I had never seen that message before. Not in training, not in any manual. Ma'am, the child said my name again. You can see it now, can't you? I swallowed hard. I don't understand what's happening, I said, even though I truly didn't. That's okay, the child replied, their voice suddenly calm in a way that was terrifying. It's always like this. Always, I asked. Every time I call, it said. Someone answers, and then they disappear. The screen in front of me flickered. The call was still open. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't sure whether I was talking to someone who needed to be rescued or something that should never have called 911 in the first place. The call ended in the strangest way possible. No hang-up click, no disconnect tone. The sound simply vanished, as if someone had sucked all the air out of the line. The screen returned to standby. No recording saved, no incident code. I hadn't even had time to breathe when my supervisor was suddenly standing behind me. Log it, he said curtly. False alarm. I turned to him. There was no location, no caller ID, and it was a child in danger. How is that? False. Alarm. He repeated, his voice low but final. You don't want to get involved in this. I stared at him, waiting for an explanation. None came. He walked away as if the call had been nothing more than meaningless static. I did as I was told. I typed false alarm into the notes. The words looked far too neat compared to the chaos still pounding in my chest. My shift ended at 6 a.m. I don't remember how I got home. One whisper kept looping in my head, every time. I returned to the center earlier than usual the next night. Not out of duty, but because I needed to know. During my break, I accessed the internal database, unofficially, without authorization. I searched for reports with similar descriptions. Children, no location data, system errors. 3 results came up. 3 dispatchers. Within the last 5 years, all 3 had received a call labeled Source Unidentified. All 3 had written detailed initial notes. And then, the records stopped abruptly. Employment status resigned. No reason. No notes. No exit interviews. As if they had never existed. I opened the recording file for my call from the previous night. There was nothing. No file. No timestamp. No trace. The storage system showed a perfect blank, clean to an absurd degree. I started trying to reassure myself, maybe this was an internal test, a reaction drill for anomalous scenarios, some kind of stress test I hadn't been told about. The thought made it easier to breathe. Until the night shift began. 12:51 a.m. The phone rang. I stared at the screen before answering. Part of me hoped it was a wrong number, a car accident, any familiar kind of panic. I picked up. Do you remember me? That voice. Not a note off, not a beat late, no sign of a child who had cried for hours the night before. You? I took a second to steady my voice. Where are you? Still here, it replied. The room is still dark. I stared at the system clock. More than 24 hours had passed. Did you sleep at all? I asked. No, it said. There's no day or night here. My throat felt dry and raw. Listen to me, I said slowly, one word at a time. I need you to describe what's around you. Anything. The child was silent for a second. Then it said, You're sitting at desk 3. To your left is a cup of coffee that's gone cold. On the wall in front of you is a round clock running 2 minutes slow. I turned my head. Everything was correct. How do you know that? I asked, barely above a whisper. Because I've seen it, it replied, just like the ones before. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid the microphone would pick it up. Who are the ones before? I asked, but the question didn't seem to matter to it. The child's voice softened, almost sad. Sarah, it said. Do you remember last time? Last night? I asked. No, it answered. The time before that. A chill ran down my spine. You hung up on me, the child said quietly, just like before. I stared at the end call button in front of me. I had never hung up on anyone who needed help. At least, that's what I had always believed. After that shift, I didn't go home right away. I stayed behind in the dispatch room, waiting until the administrative wing was almost empty. The fluorescent lights reflected off the rows of monitors, making everything look cold and lifeless. This was when things that were not allowed usually happened. I logged into the extended access system. No official logs, no reports. If I were caught, I could lose my job. But the unease inside me was stronger than that fear. I opened the National Missing Children Database, NCIC. Age 6 to 9, gender unknown. Holding environment, enclosed room, no windows. No guardian present during the call. I tried every possible variation, fake names, vague descriptions, the widest time range, nothing. Not a single matching record, not a single similar case, as if that child had never existed. Don't do that. The voice behind me made me spin around. Mark, the night shift colleague with 10 more years of experience than me. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. What are you looking for? He asked, even though his eyes said he already knew. I just want to make sure. Don't, he cut in. Digging into this won't help you. I looked at him. You know about it, don't you? Mark was silent for a few seconds. Then he sighed and pulled up a chair beside me. In this line of work, he said quietly, there are things that never make it into the manual. He told me about something veteran dispatchers half jokingly, half seriously called phantom calls. Calls with no source, no location, no records, usually children. Always whispers. And they always made the listener feel like they were the only person in the world who could hear them. And then what? I asked. Mark stared at the dark screen in front of us. Then someone makes a mistake. That mistake could be sending rescue teams to a place that doesn't exist, or staying on the line too long, or not staying on long enough. The outcome is always the same, he said. Someone dies, not the child, the real person. I wanted to argue, to say it was just hearsay. But the image of 3 dispatchers who had suddenly quit flashed through my mind. That night, I didn't sleep. When I closed my eyes, I heard crying. Very distant. like it was echoing through thick walls. I jolted upright and checked my phone. No missed calls, no notifications, but the crying was still there. Over the next nights, it came more often. When I was showering, when I was driving, when I was sitting in silence, not loud, not clear, but enough that I couldn't forget it. On the next shift, the child called again. "I've called 911 a lot of times," it said, as if stating an obvious fact. "How many times?" I asked. "So many I can't remember." "Did someone answer every time?" I asked. "Yes," it replied. "At first." I swallowed. "And then they disappeared." "Disappeared how?" "Like you don't see them in the room anymore," it said, "like their names get erased from the screen." My heart tightened. "Sarah," the child asked, its voice light but sharp as a blade, "are you afraid of being the next one?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. For the first time, I wondered, if I really disappeared, would anyone notice? Or would I just become another clean blank space in the system? After the shift, I did something even crazier than accessing NCIC. I checked my own personnel file. Name, title, start date, everything was normal until I saw my employee ID. A string of numbers. Very familiar. I opened the former employee list and filtered by ID. The name that appeared took my breath away. The same ID, another dispatcher. Dead 8 years ago in an incident officially labeled work-related stress. My file was overlapping with the file of someone who had died. I stared at the screen, and for the first time, I wasn't sure anymore whether I was the one listening to the call or just the next name being filled into the empty space. The next morning, I didn't wait for my shift. I went back to dispatch center before the sun had fully risen. The hallways were empty, filled only with the low hum of the air conditioning, like the weak breathing of a massive sleeping body. My supervisor was sitting in his glass office. He looked at me as I walked in, his expression unsurprised, as if he had known I would come. I placed the printed employee ID record on his desk. "Explain this," I said. "Why does my ID match someone who died 8 years ago?" He didn't look at the paper right away. He sighed, took off his glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "There are things," he said slowly, "that should have stayed buried." "I don't care," I replied. "I'm getting calls that don't exist. I'm hearing a child who isn't in any record." He studied me for a long time. Then he nodded, as if finally accepting something unavoidable. "After that incident," he said, "we cleaned the system." "What incident?" I asked. He stood up and closed the office door. His voice dropped. "A failed rescue operation. 8 years ago. A call from a child locked inside an abandoned industrial complex. The dispatcher at the time did everything by the book. Stayed on the line, reassured the caller, sent units to the determined location. But the location data was wrong. The rescue team arrived late, at the wrong place. The child died before they found the real location. We followed procedure," he said. "And that's what killed it." Afterward, the center was investigated. Media, lawyers, crushing pressure. In the end, everything was closed with a technical report, a rare system error. "And then the calls started," he continued. "Not often, not predictable, but always the same. A child, a dark room, no location. Some believed it was just interference. A technological glitch born from data that was never fully erased. Others," he said, looking straight at me, "believe it's a memory. The memory of a child who once called for help, trapped inside the very system it trusted. That night, I received the call again. The child's voice was weaker, no longer panicked, just tired. 'I just want someone to listen until the end,' it said. I clenched my fist. 'You know,' I said, 'hanging up is absolutely forbidden.' 'I know,' it replied. They knew too. 'The ones before me?' I asked. 'Yes,' it said. 'They stayed on the line for a very long time, until someone else died.' I understood then. Staying on the line isn't always saving someone. Sometimes it only prolongs a loop. After the shift, I went back to see my supervisor again. 'If everyone knows,' I asked, 'why am I still here?' He was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, almost in a whisper. 'Because the system needs someone to end it.' I looked at him. 'Who?' He met my eyes, his gaze heavy. 'The only person who ever hung up,' he said, 'was you.' The room seemed to shrink. 'I've never,' I started. 'In the old records,' he cut in, 'the dispatcher 8 years ago followed procedure, stayed on the line, sent help. The child died. But in the deleted log,' he continued, 'there's another detail. A call before that, someone ended it.' My heart pounded. 'That person carried your ID,' he said. Same number, same shift, same decision. I left the office numb. If I was the one who hung up before, then is the child calling me because it needs to be saved, or because it's waiting for me to do it again? The final call came on the busiest night the dispatch center had seen all month. A multi-vehicle pileup on the freeway, a house fire in the West Side residential area. Dozens of calls stacking on top of one another, the screens flickering non-stop like a heart monitor in cardiac arrest. 58 a.m., the phone rang. I saw the text appear before I had time to think. No caller ID, no location, no standard alert. I answered. Crying burst through the line instantly. No whispering, no hesitation. It was the sobbing of a child who had tried to stay quiet for far too long and finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Ma'am, I'm scared. I tightened my grip on the headset. I'm listening. I'm here. I don't want to be here anymore, the child sobbed. I've called so many times. I know, I said. I know. The system began making strange sounds. Automatic warnings lit up on the secondary monitors. The map flickered as red points appeared and vanished repeatedly, as if someone were dragging and dropping locations that didn't exist. Rescue units are being dispatched, a coworker shouted from the desk beside me. I turned sharply. No, stop, too late. A dispatch order had already been sent. No clear coordinates, just a wide, empty zone on the map. My heart slammed in my chest. I had seen this before, in Mark's stories, in the redacted reports. If I stayed on the line, the system would try to complete the protocol, and it would send real people to a place that wasn't real. The child lowered their voice, as if speaking directly into my ear. If you keep listening to me, it whispered, they'll die. I closed my eyes. I saw the image again, 8 years ago. A call handled perfectly, a procedure followed without a single mistake, and a death no one wanted to take responsibility for. I opened my eyes. I'm listening, I said, my voice shaking but steady. I need to ask you something. Yes. Do you want this to end? The child was silent for a long time, for the first time since I had known that voice. I'm tired, it said. I just want peace. I understood. This call was no longer a plea for help. It was a loop, a wound that wouldn't close, sustained by people who followed the rules perfectly. A loop born from guilt, from fear of responsibility, from no one daring to do the wrong thing, to save someone. In front of me was the end call button, a small red button. I had been taught that pressing it while the caller was still speaking was the greatest taboo of this job. I heard my supervisor calling my name from behind me. I didn't turn around. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know who I was apologizing to. I'm sorry I listened too late. The child wasn't crying anymore. It's okay, it said, its voice light as air. You're the only one who remembers. I pressed the button, no click, no disconnect tone, just silence. Then, as if someone had flipped a massive switch, everything returned to normal. The alerts vanished. The map stabilized. The false red points were gone. Rescue teams received updated orders, redirecting them to places that actually needed help. The dispatch room let out a collective exhale. Good handling, someone said. I took off my headset. My hands were still shaking. There was no crying in my head anymore. No whispers, no echoes, just the exhausted emptiness that follows a decision you can't take back. I knew what I had done. I had broken the most important rule. And for the first time in years, no one died because of a call that should never have existed. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen as it returned to standby mode. If anyone asked, I wouldn't have a perfect answer. I only knew one thing. Sometimes, to save the living, you have to be brave enough to end the cry of something that is no longer here. And I don't know whether this time the loop truly ended. The days that followed passed in a frightening kind of normalcy. No more unknown calls, no more system glitches, no strange warning lines popping up during night shifts. Everything ran smoothly, straight out of the manual, as if the dispatch center had never held a single fracture. I was called into management's office. Good pressure handling, they said. That shift was intense. You stayed calm. I nodded. I said the appropriate thank yous. No one asked what I did in the final second of that call. No one mentioned the end call button. And I didn't say anything either, because I knew I had violated the greatest unspoken taboo of this profession, something never written down but universally understood. Never be the one to end a cry for help. A week later, just as I was starting to believe it was truly over, An internal email appeared in my inbox. Subject: Call resolved. Case closed. No attachment. No details. No case number. Just a single line, like a period at the end of a story no one else remembered. I asked Mark. He frowned. What email? I asked my supervisor. He looked at me, confused. There was no such case this week. I checked my inbox again. The email was still there. But when I hovered my cursor to forward it, it vanished, as if it had never existed. Gradually, I realized something even more terrifying than the calls themselves. I was the only one who still remembered that child. No one else mentioned it. Not in the hallways. Not in the records. Not in the half-joking stories traded during night shifts. That memory lived entirely inside me, unshareable, unverifiable. At night, I started to dream. In my dreams, I sat in front of the 911 screen. Everything was dark. No coworkers, no noise, just the screen, flashing endlessly. Incoming call, incoming call, incoming call. But I didn't answer. I just watched. I woke with a vague, unsettled guilt, not because I had hung up, but because I wasn't sure whether I had done the right thing or merely the necessary one. I asked myself the same question every night. Did I save the living, or did I erase one last cry for help so the system could remain stable? There was no answer, only a long, drawn-out silence. I'm still a dispatcher. I still answer when the phone rings. I still reassure, still send help, still do everything by the book. But ever since that night, whenever I hear a child's voice on the other end of the line, my heart skips a beat. One night shift, nearly a month later, I sat down at my familiar desk, coffee on the left, the wall clock still running 2 minutes slow. The screen in front of me lit up. A line of text appeared. No caller ID, no location, just 4 words. Chiming call. I stared at it. No ringing, no sound, just the words, motionless, waiting for my decision. I placed my hand on the headset, and for the first time since becoming a 911 dispatcher, I didn't know which was more terrifying, answering the call or letting it ring forever in silence.